Hello, my name is Juan Jesus. Welcome to Central Park. I work as a guide for the Central Park Conservancy. Traditionally, we'd meet in Central Park for these special programs. Due to the current pandemic, we've gone virtual. Usually, there's a lot of walking, but today we don't have to travel at all, so let's consider that a bonus. On today's members-only event, we'll be exploring 10 of the 30-plus bridges and arches throughout Central Park. We'll learn why they were built, talk about some of the stories behind them, and share how the Conservancy cares for them. We'll be together for approximately 30 minutes. Before we get started, a bit of housekeeping. All participants are muted, but you can use the chat feature to say hello, and if you have a question, try using the Q&A feature. My colleagues Jose and Brendan will be answering your questions. You will also be invited to participate in some polls, which will pop up on your screen during the program. I'll share the results once everyone has voted. Now let's begin. You can see the 10 bridges we'll discuss on this map here to the left-hand side. They're scattered all around the park, so we're going to break this program into 5 parts: tunnels, cast iron, rustic and naturalistic, and structures directly connected to the landscape. We'll end with a few structures that are no longer here. We know that everyone has a favorite arch or bridge in Central Park. We apologize in advance if we don't discuss your favorite. We just don't have the time at the moment, but do ask questions and my colleagues will answer them. Even if they're not about our bridges or arches, we can still discuss these things and talk about them. Before we go any further, let's look, excuse me one second. Now, before we go any further, let's get some terminology down. First, bridge versus arch. Technically, a bridge goes over water and an arch goes over land. When it comes to naming the bridges and arches in Central Park, however, park designers didn't exactly stick to these naming conventions. So you hear this terminology exchange, a bridge or an arch, bridge does an arch, and so on. Now, abutment and spandrel. Abutments are the structures used to hold up the ends of the bridge. Most all the abutments in Central Park are stone. A spandrel is the triangular section a spandrel is a triangular section, part of the bridge that fills in the corners. In Central Park, they're usually decorated with some sort of design. And here we have that perfect representation of what an abutment is and a spandrel. Here you see images of the 3 designers of Central Park. You see Frederick Law Olmsted to the left, Calvert Vaux right at center, and Jacob Ray Mould to the right. You'll hear me mention them a lot throughout this presentation, but we should highlight that the bridges and arches should be attributed to Vaux and Mould. They designed many of the bridges and the decorative ornamentations on them. Now, when Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux designed Central Park, they created an innovative system of roadways and pathways called drives, rides, and walks. In their master plan, none of these pathways ever touched. This is called separation of grade. This means a pedestrian could walk from the bottom of the park to the top, never having to dodge a carriage or a horse. They did this through the creation of bridges, arches, and tunnels. Some of these were utilitarian, while others were ornamental and created out of brick, granite, marble, cast iron, rustic wood, and boulders quarried from within the park. None of the bridges are alike. Each have their own distinct look and placement within the park. Over time, additional bridges and arches were added to the park, some were removed, and today we have a total of 31 in the park proper, with 14 in the transverse roads. Now, before we get into the first part of our presentation and look at the transverse road, I want to introduce our first pool. Let me pull it up and you will be able to see it pop up on your screen. And here it is launching. The question is, how many of Central Park's bridges and arches have you crossed? If you're unsure, just guess. We'll give it a couple of moments for everyone's votes to come in, and then we'll move on, and I'll share the results momentarily. I see there are still some results coming in. All right, let's end the poll. We'll give it a few moments. There's still a couple that are still coming in. We have a total of 62 visitors in attendance on today's event. All right, you can always let us know in the comment section as well, any insight that you'd like. Now, the most important bridges in Central Park are the ones you can see. One of the original design requirements for Central Park was 4 transverse roads connecting the east side and the west side. In an ingenious and innovative move, Olmsted and Vaux designed these roads below the grade of the park. That's it. That's right, they are actually hidden from view. They're not part of the park proper per se. Transverse roads, as they are called, run through 66th Street, at 79th Street, 86th Street, and 96th Streets. This drawing from 1860 depicts the rationale behind the transverse roads. If the roads ran right through the park, we'd have traffic, which at that time included livestock moving right through right through Olmsted and Vaux's naturalistic, peaceful paradise. Oops, sorry, here it is. Here's the image. This is how back in time people made use of these transverse roads. As I mentioned, people moving livestock, even emergency vehicles as well. This carriage over here is carrying a tank. It's probably a firefighting truck. This is the 66th Street transverse, and it was the first to be completed. In order to build these bridges over these transverses, they had to blast through the bedrock of Manhattan using gunpowder. Unlike other bridges in the park proper, the bridges over these roads are purely utilitarian and are not meant to be seen. Shrubs and other greenery work to camouflage the structure and the view of the traffic below. They are hardly ever noticed. Even when there is loud traffic running through these transverses, you don't necessarily pay attention because vehicles are not in sight, and the visually bucolic aspect of the park remains unbroken. It is worth noting that these structures holding the park above them are inspected by the Department of Transportation to ensure that they are safe for the uses of today. Emergency vehicles and even double-decker buses can fit through these tunnels built some 160 years ago. Now let us share the results of our first poll and see how many of the bridges you have explored. We have 2% that answered none yet. So we have someone that hasn't visited the park yet. A lot awaiting for you. The park is looking spectacular. 1 through 10, 19 have stated that you visited or explored 1 through 10 of these bridges. 39%, 21 of you have answered 10 to 20 of them. 17% or 9 of you have answered that you've visited 20 to 30 of them. And 7%, 4 of you have explored all of them. That is super awesome, and I'm sure that there's more to explore from different angles as you enter back into these incredible creations. Now, I want to take you above ground to explore some of the cast iron bridges and arches in the park. We'll look at 3 cast iron bridges. And here on the map to the left, you can see where those bridges are situated on the southern side, on the southern section of the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis Reservoir, and also on the northern section of the reservoir. They are Pine Pan Carriage, bridge number 28, right on the northern side, and bridge number 24 on the southern section of the reservoir. They are sights to behold, and as they are made using technological advances that were relatively new to the United States at the time. Cast iron was generally less expensive and easier to craft than stone. At the time, second half of the 19th century, New York saw an incredible construction boom it made its way from bridges to buildings, actually, even. Many of the buildings in Soho, for example, are facades covered in cast iron. Each of the cast iron bridges we'll discuss on this presentation today will be directly situated over the bridle trail. So let's discuss that. As I mentioned, Central Park had drives for carriages, walks for people, and rides for horses. The bridle trail was that ride. It was built to accommodate manly and invigorating horsemanship, a form of active recreation. This map is from the 1870s. What you are seeing is the full bridle path. The blue line is the path as it exists today. The section of the path marked by the red dotted line was removed in the 1930s. You can see that it used to exit at 5th Avenue and 59th Street, right here by Grand Army Plaza. Now, in the original plan, in the original design for Central Park, this wasn't supposed to manifest, this extension here. The original bridle trail was pretty much encircling the reservoir area. However, a community of very influential horsemen felt strongly that the park should serve them with an expanded bridle trail. So processes were organized, and the bridle trail was extended south down the west side and out of the park on 5th Avenue. The pedestrians avoid the trail with the several arches that were built, and that is what we are going to be looking at now. This is Pine Bank Arch. This is a very intricate cast iron arch located at the southern end of the park, pretty much at the current terminus of the bridle trail, and was built in 1861, so very early on in the days of the park, when construction for the park began. This is from the top, from the deck of Pine Bank Arch, and here you can see the end of the bridle trail. Pretty much Robert Moses in the 1930s, head of the New York City Parks Department at the time, expanded the Heckscher Playground. At the time, they terminated the bridle trail just beyond Pine Bank Arch here, as you can see. In 2006, the Conservancy restored this area and made this terminus more suitable as a turnaround for horses. Now, in the early 1980s, the Department of Parks undertook a restoration effort to bring this, to pretty much restore it and bring back a lot of the original designs. You can see some of those recreated ornamentations on this particular slide here. There are cast iron bridges over the bridle trail along the original reservoir trail as well. So we find ourselves right at the very south, but there's also a couple of others further north, and we'll explore two of them right now. Let's start with the one on the northern side of the reservoir. This is referred to as bridge number 28. All the bridges in the park started out with numerical designations as they were being designed, but soon after were co-named to complement attributes of the landscape. This bridge is also known as Gothic Bridge. Gothic Bridge is the only bridge on the northern side of the 106-acre Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis Reservoir. Gothic Bridge derives its name from this distinct similarity to Middle Age Gothic church architecture. In this historic drawing from 1872, you can see some people on the bridge and a horse rider running under. This is a great example of separation of grade, like we discussed at the beginning of this program. I particularly like how this bridge conforms to the landscape. The three Gothic wisps on those corner spandrels make this bridge appear very light. Although cast iron is easy to shape into many designs, don't be deceived, it is very heavy actually. Gothic bridge allows a safe passage for joggers to enter the reservoir's Stephanie and Fred Schumann running track. And in addition to the running track, the bridle trail itself is a very popular running route. Let's now head over to the southern section of the reservoir. This is bridge number 24. No code name to this one yet. This bridge has a similar story to bridge 28. It was created to help pedestrians avoid the horses along the bridle trail. Notice how detailed the bridge number 24 is. Cast iron was far easier to manipulate than stone. The spandrels, adorned with beautiful flower-like patterns, were designed by Jacob Ray Mould. He designed the vast majority of the bridges and arches in Central Park. Now the deck of Bridge 24 is also part of Gilder Run, which is named after Richard Gilder, whose love of Central Park was influential to the founding of the Central Park Conservancy in 1980. Here's an image of Mr. Gilder and the Conservancy's first president, Betsy Barlow Rogers. Mr. Gilder contributed generously and immensely to the park's miraculous transformation. He passed away this last May. He had been a runner of the reservoir running track for over 40 years and had served as a leader of the Conservancy's Board of Trustees since its inception. A special thanks to Mr. Gilder for all his work. At Gilder Run, you can spot inscribed paving stones. At Gilder Run, you can spot inscribed paving stones just south of the bridge, as you can see here to the right. These plaques include names, tributes, and memories for park visitors to read for years to come. And we're now headed back south, near where we started to explore a bridge near the southeastern corner of the park. Now we're looking at a different lens. We're looking at bridges still, but we're looking at a different lens. We are going to look at some of the rustic and naturalistic bridges and arches that seamlessly blend into the landscape, just as Olmsted and Box intended. We'll look at three of them. Gapstow Bridge right in the southern end, and then we're going to head north towards Huddlestone Arch and Glenspan Arch. We'll start at Gapstow, which is both a stone and actually a cast iron bridge as well, depending on the year that you look at it. This is the original design for Gapstow Bridge, built in 1874 by Calvert Vaux and Jacob Ray Mould. Central Park was officially completed in 1873, and Gapstow Bridge was built in 1874 as part of a response to address traffic complaints due to the wild popularity of the park's attractions nearby. Other bridges built at this time include Outset and Enscope arches nearby, only one of which remains. Now this image here is a stereoscope image of Gapstow Bridge. A stereoscope is pretty much a souvenir that you purchased back in the 19th century, and this piece of film that you received, you placed it in a special type of camera, and you brought the camera close to your face, looked through the lenses, and you were able to see pretty much a three-dimensional rendition of these icons in the park. Basically, you can pretty much bring a part of Central Park with you. Now, Gapstow itself was built as an ornamental suspension bridge with decorative cast iron railings, carrying a flat wooden pedestrian path over a narrow neck of the pond. It endured for about 20 years, providing access to the promontory. The promontory is what today is the Hallett Nature Sanctuary. After 20-some years, unfortunately, it decayed and was replaced with the current structure here. Gapstow was built Well, the current gapstone that we see here was built out of Manhattan mica schist and completed in 1896, right at the turn of the century. During the warm weather months, ivies, trees, and vines mask the bridge in a green camouflage. This further enhances the naturalistic aspect of the surrounding landscapes. Now, looking south from atop Gapstone Bridge, visitors can enjoy an iconic view of Midtown Manhattan, dominated by the iconic and legendary Plaza Hotel. Looking at the surrounding landscapes from atop these bridges is something that is highly encouraged. Our next bridge will give us a very different view, actually. Now, this incredible feat of engineering is one of the entrances to the North Woods. It's Huddlestone Arch. It was constructed in 1866 and created out of stones pulled from within Central Park, from the territory where Central Park was built. For this arch, the goal was to utilize natural and irregular shaped boulders to give the illusion that the arch wasn't built by men, instead by boulders that just fell into place. A very romantic idea, the essence that nature reorganizes itself for our uses. Very little human intervention, or so it appears. This is from the other side here, and you can see how the rocks are huddled together, holding this superstructure built in the second half of the 19th century. This is a detail of one of the boulders within the bridge, weighing an approximate 100 tons. For the longest time, I thought that this was something that was there naturally, but no, there are records that indicate that this boulder specifically was moved and maneuvered and specifically placed, so to place the other rocks accordingly, so to have the structure that we have today. Incredible to think that these were moved by people. Another example of the ingenuity behind the creation of Central Park. Huddlestone is one of the arches that bookend the North Woods, as I mentioned, and the other one is Glen Span Arch down to the south. Let's check that one out. This is it right here. This is how it originally looked. And again, this is another stereoscope. If we had the device, and you would think that with these computers, we would be able to do this, but the technologies have emerged. You would have been able to see a three-dimensional rendering of this structure. It sits at the southern entrance of the North Woods. Above, you have the main drive for vehicular traffic, and below, there is a promenade right along the slow-moving water of the narrow stream called the Loch. It was finished in 1865 and was made of a stone called gneiss, G-N-E-I-S-S, wooden trestles, as you can see on the top, and a wooden railing as well. The rustic wooden railing is another way that Vox and Mold infuse their creation with nature. But like Gapstone, roughly 20 years later, when this bridge was completed in about 1885, the wood portion deteriorated and was replaced by more gneiss. This is the current view of Glen Span Arch today. An important element of the 18-foot high and 16-foot wide arch is that it's sunken down into the park. Pretty much like much of the park itself, and this is to allow the surrounding forest to grow wildly, framing it into the picturesque North Woods. Another key feature of Glen Span is to give the visitor only a brief taste of what's ahead. No one view from the arch will show the entirety of what awaits further down the path. I mentioned that it's sunken down below, and to access the arch, you walk down alongside this cascade, water that is itself cascading from the pool just south of Glen Span Arch. And from this cascade, the water trickles down into the loch. This cascade drowns out city noises, adding another layer that, in addition to the portal that Glen Span is, further removes the visitor from the city's built environment and enhances the idea of escaping the city. A very effective form of escape, if you ask me. One of my favorite sections in the park. In the summer of 1992, an almost $300,000 restoration project was completed, revitalizing Glen Span Arch. I've looked at some of the images and I've seen the water turned off and people working in this landscape, even removing the fish and the wildlife as well. Later on, everything is restored. A lot goes into keeping these the way they do. Now I want to share two decorative structures that were also designed in tandem with the landscape. So this is another form of taking bridges and having them complement the surrounding landscapes, but instead of naturalistic, we're going to look at some other features. I want to share these and although both the next two bridges that we'll be looking at, I'll be sharing them for different reasons. We're going to talk about Balcony Bridge, just south over here, marked by this red dot, and also Winterdale Arch, located a little bit further north. This is Balcony Bridge, which was built in 1860. It sits at the northern end of the lake. It was created out of Manhattan mica schist, excavated from the park, and another type of stone called mountain greywacke. I want to highlight the water that you see under the bridge, as that plays into the story of this bridge very heavily. This is a lithograph made by Currier and Ives. It shows people skating on the lake. The lake was the first attraction that opened in Central Park in December 1858. People were thrilled to go ice skating here and came by the thousands. If you didn't know how to ice skate, you could rent an ice skating chair, as you can see with the figure here off to the right-hand side. In this lithograph, you can even see dogs enjoying the ice. The main open lake even permitted men and women to hold hands. This was a new thing. This was something that was not seen prior to this very much. If you were a lady of good breeding, however, you could enjoy this activity in a section of the lake with others like you called the Ladies' Pond, which is on the other side of Balcony Bridge. I just want to mention also very quickly that the bridge that you see in the background here, another bridge going over the waters of the lake, is Capstone Bridge, the most iconic bridge in the park. But moving back to Balcony Bridge here, the bridge gets its name from the balconies that look over into the lake. A bridge specifically built for the purpose of looking over it. People could perch themselves on the benches and take in the view of the skaters. Watching people ice skate is a very popular thing to do in Central Park. I find it very calming, actually. Now when people fall, though, I feel their pain as well. But what if you wanted to take in the view of the ladies skating on the ladies' pond on the other side? Well, tough luck. There are no balconies on the other side, on the western side of Balcony Bridge. Balcony Bridge is one of the few asymmetrical bridges in the park. The side that overlooked Ladies' Pond didn't have any balconies, and this discouraged people from watching the women skate. It's very interesting to see these dynamics of how the bridge is visually organized. Now today the lake rarely freezes, and ice skating now happens on rinks that were built in the 20th century. The Ladies' Pond is no longer a pond, but marshy territory, as you can see here. It's marshy territory that draws a lot of birds, actually. It is not uncommon to spot birders from a top balcony bridge looking for some of the over 280 different kinds of birds that make their way through Central Park every year. Considering ice skating historically only happened in the winter, the next arch that we are about to explore is very fitting. This is a historic image of Winterdale Arch. It was completed in 1862, and it features the largest span of the masonry bridges in the park. It carries the main carriage drive, and below it, the bridle trail and promenade for foot traffic, another perfect example of separation of grade. This is how it looks today. Olmsted and Vaux designed this immediate area around this arch, roughly between 72nd and 102nd Street, to really stand out in the winter. They lined the drive with coniferous trees to promote horse-drawn carriage rides through the winter months. In 1993, the Conservancy restored Winterdale and reconstructed the railings that you see here at the top, which had been missing for some 50 years. Now here is Winterdale in its true element. Although most of the coniferous trees died by the early 1800s, the Conservancy has been replanting coniferous trees and bringing back this wintry feel. Even without them, the white colored stone was especially imported from Maine by boat, helping to extend the wintry feeling into the warmer seasons, into the warmer months. Fascinating. Now the winter theme extends under the arch as well, with snowflakes and brick-like work on the railings. And here you can see this Philadelphia pressed red brick, and the snowflake-like patterns are made out of Milwaukee white brick, making use of different materials to bring in that connection to the rest of the United States. Very special, and a very special theme throughout the park as well. Now, there are a few bridges and arches that did not stand the test of time. We talked about the original Gapstone Bridge, which was one of them. Let's discuss two additional ones, which are no longer in Central Park. Here we see marked just north of the dairy, Marble Arch. And south, we see marked Spur Rock Arch. Marble Arch is represented by the dot closest to the mall, as I mentioned here behind the dairy. And Spur Rock Arch is by where the Heckscher Playground is located today. This is Marble Arch, another stereoscope. This is the entrance that you had from just behind the dairy. It was at the south end of the mall, as presented and separated the carriage drive from the pedestrian path. So pedestrians would enter under the arch and then climb a set of stairs on the far side. And here you can see this light section here. That's where those stairs used to be. Yeah, you would have appeared by where the statue of Christopher Columbus is located in that section of the park. It was special because it was made entirely of, you guessed it, marble. Marble arch made out of marble. Within the arch were nooks for sitting, one of which contained one of the park's original 27 drinking fountains. It was a place of refreshment and a place of rest as well. Very cool bridge, very cool arch. Marble Arch was destroyed by Robert Moses in the 1930s as he was making the park more suitable for automobile traffic. In fact, I've seen articles out there that have proposed for this specific bridge to come back. That's another story. Now, the other past arch I want to mention is Spur Rock Arch, also called Oval Arch. This one sat at the southern edge of the park at 7th Avenue and 61st Street. This arch was set into a spur of Manhattan mica schist, hence the name. Now, like many of the other arches we've discussed, it separated the bridle trail from the pedestrian paths. Remember, until the 1930s, the bridle path extended all the way to 5th Avenue and 59th Street. This bridge was made of cast and wrought iron and known for its decorative wheels incorporated into the spandrels, as you can see in this section here in this image. This arch was also destroyed during the Robert Moses era in 1934. And although it could have been incorporated into the playground, by the 1930s, this arch had deteriorated significantly. Now let's take a few moments and engage in another pool. I'm going to launch it. We thank you for your support of the Central Park Conservancy and Central Park, and would like to get a general sense as to how long you've been a member in our organization. All right, gonna give it a few more moments and we'll end the poll. And I will be sharing the results a little bit later on. Now we move on to our next bridge. This is a bridge designed by Calvert Vaux. It's called Oak Bridge, and it's one of the larger and more elegant of the park's wooden bridges. The footbridge was originally built of white oak, hence its name, and featured panels of decorative cast iron set in the railings. Pretty much there is not a bridge in Central Park that we haven't touched with your help and support. Restoring these bridges, maintaining them, and restoring the landscapes that surround them. We are making people, and through this work, we are also making people aware of the work that goes on into keeping these for everyone's enjoyment. I want to now highlight some of the restoration aspects of Oak Bridge as one of the many examples of the Conservancy's work. Again, Oak Bridge, this is another historic image. It stretches from the northwestern section of the lake into the western edge of the Wild Ramble, offering stunning views of the Midtown Manhattan skyline. Historic image, and this is pretty much how the bridge looks today. However, in the 1930s, by the 1930s, the bridge had completely deteriorated. It was removed and a utilitarian footbridge was put in its place. It was called Bank Rock Bridge after Bank Rock Bay, the body of water on which it sits. There was a plan to replace the bridge at the time, but unfortunately that never happened. Fast forward to 2009, this is when the work was done to pretty much reinvent the bridge. This included taking down the existing bridge, recreating the abutments. As you can see here, these massive stones are the abutments of the bridge, and rebuilding it. The Conservancy didn't use the same materials as Vaux did in the 1860s, as we wanted to ensure longevity. This bridge is constructed of steel and aluminum painted to look like wood. This appearance of wood pretty much complements nicely the adventure ahead over at the Ramble. Now I want to share the results of our poll, see where we stand. It indicates 26% of you, or 14, have been a member for 1 to 2 years. A lot for you to explore and discover. Thank you for your support. 17% have been members for 2 to 5 years. 9 total. 23%, 5 to 10 years. Thank you. And 34%, wow, amazing. I have been a member for 10 plus years. And even then, I find that there's still a lot more for you to discover. Every perspective and every angle is truly special in this three-dimensional work of art. Now, I hope you've enjoyed exploring Central Park today with us. Although we couldn't be together in person, we did get to travel across Central Park, and one of the benefits of virtual programming, and one of the many benefits of virtual programming, I want to note that many of the historic photos that we saw are from the New York Public Library digital collections. But before we finish, this is another historic image of one of my favorite bridges, and this bridge is located in my neighborhood in Washington Heights. It's called the High Bridge. The High Bridge is the oldest bridge actually over the waters of the East River. It's from 1848. It was built to bring water from 40 miles north of Manhattan, in a sense, and this water ended up at the reservoirs over in Central Park. Through this work, I've been able to find a very special connection to Central Park. Pretty much everything connects to it. I want to get a general sense as well as to what was your favorite bridge on today's exploration, and I'm going to launch another poll for that. But if it's a bridge that we didn't mention, feel free to share it in the comment section. And if it's a bridge now within Central Park or New York, even in another part of the world, feel free to share that as well. We would love to know. Let's see, so this is the pool of the bridges and arches we visited today that still exist in Central Park. Which was your favorite? And again, if it's not here, let me know in the comment section. All right, we're going to end the poll and share the results immediately so that you get a general sense as to what everyone shared. 1% or one person liked Pine Bank Arch, 29% liked bridge number 28, Gothic Bridge, beautiful bridge. 3%, one likes bridge number 24, beautiful bridge as well. Capstone Bridge was preferred by 4 of you, or 11%. Huddlestone Arch, 31%, so this is by far the favorite. Then there's also Glenspan Arch, preferred by 9%. Balcony Bridge, beautiful bridge, a beautiful structure, incredible history, 3%. And Winterdale Arch, 3% as well. Now, I want to thank each and every one of you for your commitment to Central Park. As members, we know you are integral to our work and can thank you enough. I also thank everyone in the Conservancy for helping put this program together. I want to leave this room open for a few moments to answer any of your questions. And pretty much this ends our program from the Conservancy. From the Central Park Conservancy, please stay safe and be well. Until next time.